Imagine this. It's the early morning of June 30th, 1908. You're in a remote Siberian village. Everything is still and quiet, the air is crisp. Suddenly, an intense, unbearable heat washes over you. The grass at your feet begins to singe and turn black, even before any sound reaches your ears. A moment later, a deafening roar shatters the silence. If a giant space rock explodes in a forest and nobody's there to see it, does it still make a sound? Well, in the case of the Tunguska event, the sound was heard over 600 miles away. The shockwave was powerful enough to knock people off their feet hundreds of miles from the epicenter, and it was registered on seismic stations all across Europe. For days, the skies over Asia and Europe glowed with an eerie light, bright enough to read a newspaper at midnight in London. Something extraordinary had happened in the middle of nowhere. The what? For nearly 2 decades, the mystery remained untouched. The region was so remote, so difficult to access, that the chaos of World War I and the Russian Revolution pushed any scientific inquiry to the back burner. It wasn't until 1927 that the first expedition, led by a determined and rugged scientist named Leonid Kulik, finally ventured into the Siberian taiga to find answers. Kulik was a mineralogist, a man of rocks and craters. He was convinced that a massive iron meteorite had struck the Earth. He envisioned finding a colossal impact crater, a giant hole in the ground filled with valuable extraterrestrial metal. This discovery, he believed, would not only solve a scientific puzzle but also provide a windfall of iron for the burgeoning Soviet industry. His team braved treacherous swamps, swarms of mosquitoes, and the unforgiving wilderness, fueled by the promise of a spectacular find. After an arduous journey, they finally reached the area. But what they found was not what they expected at all. There was no crater, no giant hole filled with iron and riches. Instead, Kulik and his men stared out at a scene of utter devastation. An immense, ghostly graveyard of trees stretching for over 800 square miles. In every direction, as far as the eye could see, millions of trees were flattened, all lying in a radial pattern, pointing away from a central point. It was like the aftermath of a colossal explosion, perfectly laid out in a massive butterfly shape. Kulik meticulously mapped the flattened forest, tracing the lines of destruction back to their origin. He was getting closer to the epicenter, the ground zero of this mysterious event. But as he approached the center, the scene became even more bizarre. Here, the trees weren't flattened. They were still standing, but they were stripped bare of all their branches and bark, left as ghostly skeletal poles pointing silently to the sky. The expedition team called it the telegraph pole forest. This was a scientific nightmare. How could there be such a massive explosion without an impact? An explosion powerful enough to flatten a forest the size of a major city, yet leave no crater? Kulik was baffled. He had traveled thousands of miles for a giant hole in the ground, and all he had to show for it were some burnt sticks and very cold feet. He spent years leading multiple expeditions, searching desperately for meteorite fragments, for any piece of the puzzle. He dug, he drilled, but he found nothing. The ground was stubbornly, frustratingly empty. The lack of a crater or any significant meteorite fragments led to a whirlwind of speculation. The mystery of Tunguska became a breeding ground for all sorts of fringe theories. Was it a black hole passing through the Earth? An experiment with the death ray by Nikola Tesla? Or, the most popular theory of all, was it the crash of an alien spaceship? The telegraph pole forest and the butterfly pattern of destruction were so strange, so otherworldly, that for many, an extraterrestrial explanation seemed the most plausible. For decades, the Tunguska event was a favorite topic for science fiction writers and UFO enthusiasts. But science keeps digging, and with new tools and a better understanding of the cosmos, a clearer picture began to emerge. The answer wasn't on the ground, it was in the sky. Scientists developed a new theory, the airburst theory. They proposed that the object from space never actually hit the ground. Instead, it disintegrated high up in the atmosphere. Imagine a stony asteroid, about the size of an office building, hurtling towards Earth at over 33,000 miles per hour. As it plummets through our atmosphere, the immense pressure and friction heat it up to thousands of degrees. It becomes a fiery projectile, a brilliant fireball brighter than the sun. But this asteroid isn't made of solid iron. It's a less dense, stony object. The intense heat and pressure become too much. About 5 to 6 miles above the Siberian forest, the asteroid vaporizes in a catastrophic explosion. It doesn't create a crater because it never makes impact. Instead, it unleashes all its kinetic energy in a single, massive burst of heat and a powerful shockwave. This pressure wave, traveling faster than the speed of sound, slams down onto the forest below. It's this downward blast that flattens the trees in that perfect radial pattern. And what about the telegraph pole forest at the center? The trees directly underneath the explosion were shielded from the horizontal blast. The shockwave came straight down from above, stripping them of their branches but leaving their trunks standing. Kulik's frustrating discovery of no impact was actually the most important clue. Modern science has finally vindicated his observations. Computer models simulating an airburst event perfectly replicate the strange pattern of destruction seen at Tunguska. Analysis of microscopic spheres trapped in tree resin from the area has revealed high concentrations of elements like iridium and nickel, consistent with a stony asteroid. The puzzle was solved. It wasn't aliens or a death ray. It was a natural, albeit terrifying, cosmic event. The energy released by the Tunguska airburst is estimated to have been about 1,000 times more powerful than the atomic bomb dropped on Hiroshima. Had it happened over a major city like London or New York, the consequences would have been unthinkable. Millions could have been killed instantly. Today the Siberian forest is healing. New trees have grown and the green canopy is slowly covering the scars of 1908. From the ground, you might not even notice the century-old catastrophe. But from the air, the faint outline of that radial blast pattern is still visible, a subtle reminder of the day the sky exploded. The Tunguska event serves as a powerful and verified reminder that the universe has a lot of ways to keep us on our toes. It doesn't need to hit us to hurt us. Sometimes it can just explode in our personal space. It highlights the very real threat that near-Earth objects pose, which is why astronomers around the world are now working tirelessly to track asteroids and comets' developing systems to give us a fighting chance if another Tunguska-sized object comes our way. The story that began with a mysterious flash in the sky now fuels our mission to protect our planet. Thanks for watching. If you found this cosmic mystery as fascinating as I did, hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into the strange and amazing stories from our world and beyond. See you next time.